everyone, I'm Ken and Profit. Welcome to another very exciting BlenderBranch.com tutorial. And in this tutorial, we're going to do a bit of super speed visual effects. So I've gotten a lot of requests on this particular topic, and I thought that was a pretty interesting request. So I thought, yeah, let's give that a try using Blender. And the result I got was pretty fun and pretty cool, and it's really kind of overly simple. So I'm going to show you how to do that inside of Blender. So first of all, we're going to do some fancy editing inside the video sequence editor. So let's come up here to video editing. And if you've never used Blender's video editor before, it has a very capable video editor. For instance, you just have your timeline here. This is the graph editor where you can animate things like transitions and use it for anything that's animated or keyframed. And this is your display. So pretty simple, and this isn't going to be a all-inclusive tutorial on how to use the VSE, but that's because this is a super speed tutorial. So yeah, sorry about that. Anyways, I will show you how to do a couple things inside the video sequence editor. First of all, we want to load in our footage. Now, how do we do that? Well, just like you would anything else in Blender, let's press Shift and A. And we can have all these options right here. Our scene option, clip, mask, movie, image, sound, all that good stuff. So I'm going to choose movie, and I'm just going to load in my footage. Now, I went out and shot some footage with my brother. That's not him, that's me. There he is. And he's actually the one that runs fast in our little instance here. Now, a couple things. You'll want to shoot your footage with some clean plates of whoever's running fast. You want your location, your particular shot, to have a few frames where they are not in the shot, and that'll just help you with the editing to later on match and move things around so that it appears like he's running fast. I didn't explain any of that very well, so I'll just show you what I mean. For now, you can see there's a few frames where I'm just sitting here, and my brother Nathan, who's the one running fast, is not in the shot. So I'm going to grab 3 frames of this clean plate so that I can use that later on. Now, before I do that, I want to show you a few things about the video sequence editor. First of all, there's 2 tracks here, and we can select them by right-clicking. This top track, the turquoise one, that's actually your audio. And you can see the audio if you select it over here on the right hand side where it says draw waveform. Blender will actually draw the waves, and you can see the audio there. We don't actually need the audio, so I'm just going to press X to delete it. Now, another thing, there's a few ways where you can cut and shrink or lengthen your video. For instance, I could just make a cut right here by pressing K, so the knife tool inside of Blender. Or I can just right click on this arrow, press G to grab, and just slide that over where I want my footage to start. And now this clip will start right there. Now, you can see this allotted time markers right here. That's your start and end frame, 1 to 200. So you can obviously adjust that. Or better yet, I'm going to just grab my entire clip by right clicking, pressing G. I'm just going to slide that so that the whole clip starts on frame 1. So now if I jump to the beginning of my footage and press Alt A, Blender will play through my clip, and Nathan walks on screen here, and you'll see he takes off running toward me, and that's where we're going to make some of our edits. And then, it starts over at frame 250. Now I might lengthen this out to 300 just so you can see a little bit more, but we're not going to use that many frames because we're going to cut most of this out and speed all of that up. So you can see once Blender plays through your video clip, it'll cache in all the frames and then play at a steady 24 frames per second. So you'll be able to play it in real time. Now, if it doesn't do that, you might have to go to your user preferences up here, and underneath your system, just increase your sequencer cache limit right there, and that'll help you with that. So now we can see a few things about the way I shot this. First of all, I don't move the entire time until his landing here. So he lands right about there, and that's when I start moving and I am overly dramatic with my reaction to him. And that's just because we didn't have anything like a leaf blower or something to cause wind or anything in our scene. So I had to really be dramatic and making it feel like he just landed on there super quickly. But until then, I remained frozen, and that's important because of the edits that we're going to do. He's essentially going to disappear right here after he takes off running. Man, how are we going to make him do that? Well, let's jump to the frame where he's just about to start running. So he kind of leans forward, and I'm going to cut on this action right there. So I'm going to select my clip by right-clicking and just press K to cut it. Okay? And now I'm going to cut all the way to where he's kind of the middle of the screen here, where he's gone halfway. He's gone half the distance of his big sprint. So right about there, somewhere he's kind of mid-air. The blurrier the actor is, the better. Kind of further emphasizes the speed. So I want to use that frame right there. So I'm going to cut along either side of that frame. So if I just use my right arrow key, jump to this frame, press K, and jump backwards, press K again. Now I have this individual frame where he's kind of mid-air. And I can delete this excess on this side by pressing X and erasing that strip. Okay? Now, I don't want it to just cut from this frame to this one. I want there to be a blank frame in between. So, for instance, let's just move this video clip or this frame over here so I can show you what I mean. If I press G to grab and hold down Control, Blender will snap that frame to the other one. And now if I just scroll left to right, you can see the effect we have, the motion that's created there. Well, I want there to be a blank frame in between this frame and that frame. So I'm going to move this frame to this channel up here, as Blender calls them. It's just another layer. Blender calls them channels. And I'm going to move it over one frame to the right. Okay? Now, what we're going to do now is grab those clean plate frames here at the beginning that we don't actually need. So remember, I had a few seconds where the camera was just rolling, where Nathan wasn't in position. And I'm just going to grab 3 frames of this clean plate. So let's see, here at the beginning we have 3 empty frames. Let's just cut right there. And I'm just going to right click to select that clean plate. Press G to grab and just drag it over here into position. So now the effect we have is he takes off running. He essentially disappears completely. He reappears halfway down and then disappears again. So this next shot needs to be the landing. So the way we do that, I'm just going to grab this track, move it over, and scrub through my footage to where he lands on this bench and my reaction starts. So right before my reaction, right about there. So I'm going to press K to cut. Delete this strip right here. Right click to select this footage. Press G to grab. And then if I just drag towards and hold down Control, Blender will snap those clips into position. And now we'll be able to play this back. Alt A, by the way, is the shortcut. And you can see, boom, right away we have, when those are all played back in real time, it's just a couple of frames, but you have the motion effect just by putting that one frame where he was kind of mid-run, and then the 2 blank frames on either side. And we have a super speed effect. Boom. Just like that. Okay? So now I'm just going to have it sort of end right here. I'll end my timeline. Well, we want to make sure that all of these clips start at the very beginning. So I'm going to press A, select them all, move it so that frame 1 starts on frame 1. And yeah, that's pretty good. And now I'll just end my timeline. I'll end it right about here. It's kind of looking at his coffee cup. So let's end it at 250. That's pretty good. And I'm just going to delete the excess. So K to cut and X delete what's left. So now I'll just press Alt A to view our entire edit here, our entire super speed effect. And this is the effect you should have. Not bad. Looks pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with that. Now you could say, yep, that's great. I love it. That's my super speed effect. And if you really want to sell the effect, add a sound effect, maybe an air blast sound or some sort of whoosh. And that'll further sell the fact that he's in motion and moving very quickly through the air. The important things are that if you have any other actors that are interacting with the person with super speed powers, that they don't really move until the landing or the reaction needs to take place, right when he sort of ends the super speed effect. And that goes for the actor too. You can see he kind of dramatically landed and moves his body around like he came to an abrupt stop. Those little acting moments will really help to sell the effect, coupled with a sound effect. Now again, you could call that good and just come over to the default panel and render this out as an image sequence or as a video clip. I'm going to choose an image sequence, and I'm just going to turn the resolution all the way up. And I'm going to hit animation and render that out as a series of PNGs. And now Blender will work on creating a video file for you that you can, or a PNG image sequence for you that you can then later take into back into Blender if you'd like and create a video clip, or you can take it into another software. Now, like I said, if you wanted to just call that good and be done with the super speed effect, you could end this tutorial right there. But if you wanted to take this one step further and add sort of the light streaks and the effect that make this look even more awesome, then we're going to do that next once this image sequence is finished rendering out. Alrighty, well now that my render has completed, I'm going to just open a new scene in Blender. So reload my startup file, and I'm going to come into the motion tracking tab right here. I'll just change this to cycles. And I'm just going to open that image sequence that we just saved out. So you'll want to just grab that series of PNGs that you rendered out and open them as a clip. And you can see now up here on the left hand side we have these two options, prefetch and set scene frames. I'm going to hit both of those so that Blender caches in all those frames. Now we're actually not going to do anything else in the motion tracking tab. That was just to get our footage inside of Blender. Now what we can do is go into the default panel right here, and I'm going to delete this cube and also the lamp. I'm going to select my camera by right clicking it, and I'm going to clear the rotation by pressing Alt R, Alt G, and then I'm going to rotate it by 90 degrees, RX 90, and then I'll just drag this backwards so that my camera is facing the center of the grid floor like so. Now I want to bring in my video clip as my background image, so I'll press N to bring up that sidebar. I'll select background image, add image, movie clip, uncheck camera clip, and if you've loaded your footage inside the motion tracking tab, you'll be able to see frame 1 of that image sequence right there. So now we have our video loaded into the background, and if we hit Alt A, we can just see, it plays through our edit that we made inside the video sequence editor, comes through quite nicely, and we can get into adding the actual streaks of light. Now this is very, very kind of overly simple the way we're going to do this. First of all, let's just scroll to the frame where he is about to start running. And I'm going to click my cursor over his head here, zoom way in, press Shift A, and add in a UV sphere. I'll hit smooth shading. You can see that sphere is enormous, so I'm just going to press S to scale and scale it way down. Oop, got off there. Scale it way down so that it's just a small little dot basically right there on his head. Now I'm going to duplicate this sphere, which I will name head. Over here on the left hand side. If you press N, you can get that sidebar up. Now I'm going to duplicate this sphere, Shift and D to duplicate. I'm going to move it to his torso, somewhere right about here. I'm going to name this one body. And now one more time, Shift D, duplicate, and move it down here at his ankle. And we'll name this one feet. Okay, you don't have to name them. I'm just naming them to keep them straight in my mind. So now we have these three spheres that are going to act as particle emitters for the streaks of light. Now, we need to animate the scaling, rotation, and location of each of these spheres. And the way we do that, we could press I to drop in a keyframe for each of those, or we can just hit automatic keyframe, this little record button, and now Blender will record any motion we do with any of these spheres. So if I just move them a little bit, you can see on our timeline it added a yellow keyframe right there. So I'm just gonna move all of these a little bit so that we get an automatic keyframe into position. Okay, and now I'm going to jump to the final frame where he's landing on the bench. I'm gonna grab each of those spheres and move them into position. So the head one, I'm just gonna scale it up so that it kind of matches roughly the same scale that it was when it was back here. I'm going to do the same thing with the one for the body right here. And finally the feet, move it over here around his ankle. And there you go. Perfect. And now because we had automatic keyframe on, the scaling, rotation, and movement of all of these was recorded from this yellow line to that yellow line. Now we want to move these spheres back into position on his body, because you can see currently in this middle frame they got off a good bit. So I'm just going to press G to grab, move that there, scale it down a bit so it kind of matches the same. Again, this is all just kind of really quick and easy stuff. Like, I'm just eyeballing everything basically. You can be more precise if you'd like, but I'm really just sort of eyeballing the same scale that it should be and just kind of going from there, just because I wanted to put out a really quick super speed tutorial, and this is one of the ways I found you could get a pretty decent effect out. So there we go. The animation of those spheres is now in place. Now on the frame, so this last frame after he has landed, we don't need any of these in place at all. So I'm just going to grab each of these and move them off camera. And I'll do the same for the frame before. So we don't need them on this frame. I'm just going to press G to grab, move them off camera. So now this is what you should have. Only available on the frames where we need them. You don't have to do that, but I just like doing it. It kind of cleans up my workspace and it looks nice and tidy. All right. Now we need each of those spheres to emit a particle system. So I'm going to create a new sphere. Let me go to top view here, and I'm just going to jump to another layer. So I'll jump to this layer where nothing is going to be visible in our render. And I'm just going to press Shift A and add in another UV sphere. And I'll hit smooth shading just for smiles. I'm going to check material panel, go new material, change it to emission, set the strength of that emission to about 5. Okay, and now if I come back to this layer, I'm going to look through my camera again. I'm going to select this top sphere right here, create new particle system. I'm going to have it emit about 1500 particles, and I don't want the start frame to be frame 1. I want it to be this frame that he starts running on, which is frame 176. So I'm going to set the start frame of that to 176, and the end frame, let's see, he ends on frame 180. So not too many frames, but we'll have this end frame be 180. I'm going to set the lifetime to 10, and we'll turn random all the way up for that. A few other settings. The size we're going to set all the way down to 0.01, and we'll turn random size even up more than that. And now we obviously want them to emit this ball of light that we created on this second layer. So how do we do that? Well, let's go back. I'm going to go back to top view and go to this second layer, grab that sphere, and I'm going to name this guy light. Okay, and let's just jump back to the first panel, go back into our particle system settings, And underneath the emitter, we're going to uncheck emitter so that this object, this sphere, isn't shown, just the particles. I'm going to select object so that it's actually emitting an object. And I'm going to select that light right there. So now, if you were to scrub through, you would see this particle system leaving a trail of those little balls of light on that first initial sphere there. And that's great. Exactly what we want. Now, they might be a little big, so I'm going to jump to this second layer and just scale this guy down a bit. Scale that ball of light down. You don't want them, obviously you can make it however big you want, but I think that's pretty good. You want that trail to be kind of faint. Here we go. And by the way, if we want to see the test render of this, let's press Shift and Z, and you should just see a streak of light, like so. Now if you want to add even more variation, you can kind of move this around so there's a keyframe, maybe rotate this sphere, just so the particle system gets a little more interesting. There's a little more rotation going on, and that'll kind of shoot particles out in different directions. So that's great. So the first one is done and dusted, ready to go. Now we're just going to basically copy that particle system to these other two. So I'm going to right click to select this sphere. Check new particle system, and right here you can see we have particle settings for that first one. We should have named it, but we didn't. But if we just, that's the first one we created. If I just select that, now all those same settings are applied to that sphere as well. So now that is leaving the path of light everywhere that second sphere goes also. Now we're just going to do the same thing with this bottom one, new particle system, and have it use that first particle system settings. And there we go. Now that one follows his feet, and you can certainly, like I said, move this sphere around, maybe rotate it a little so it does some more interesting curving. You get some cool effects going on there. But this is basically the idea we want. 3 spheres that leave a path of light behind them, and that's going to be what we use to do the streaks of light, which is great. Okay. Now how do we set this up for rendering and compositing? Well, we obviously only want this first layer to be rendered. So I'm going to come up here to the render panels. We'll name this render layer light. And I'm just going to select this first layer right there so that Blender only renders everything that's on this render layer right there. I'm going to come to the render panel, this camera. I'm going to check transparent, make sure that's checked, and I'll just hit render. Okay, so now we have these streaks of light over top a transparent background. Now we want to bring all of that into the compositor and composite it over top of our video. So I'm going to go compositing, and I like to clean up my workspace here, so let me just drag this window over and change this to the timeline. I like to have my timeline visible. I'm going to check use nodes and backdrop. Okay, now I'm just going to drag our render layer out, press Shift A, add in an input node and a movie clip node. And this drop down menu, we should see our footage right there, frame number 1. And if I press Control Shift and click, then we'll get a viewer node into position. So now we have our movie clip and our render layer. Now we want to put an alpha over node to put this render layer in over top of the movie clip. So the way we do that is Shift A, and I'm just going to search for an alpha over and take the render layer output into the bottom of that. And now this is one thing I like to do. If I hold down Shift and left click over that line, you can see we get a little extra node here, and we can connect that to the compositor. And now the compositor and viewer are going to be viewing the exact same thing. Tip of the day for you. Okay, so now our particle system is in over top of our actor. So I'm going to jump to this frame and hit render. Now that that streak of light is more visible as far as the location and kind of the streaking of it. So I'm going to escape that render. And let's work on making this look like it's actually kind of leaving a displacement in the air and just a path of light. Quicksilver effect, basically. So I'll press Shift A, and I'm going to add in a blur node, which is filter blur. But before that, I want to boost the actual light of this, of these little spheres of light. So I'm going to press Shift A and go Color RGB Curves node. I love this node. It's kind of an interesting node. If we select the white level and just take it down to the blacks, then that'll actually boost the brightness of this. But you won't really be able to see unless you blur it. So I'm going to blur the X, Y, and sides. I'm going to give this a value of 4 for each of those. So now you can see we're getting more of a kind of a streak of light look going on here. And now you'll be able to adjust the brightness based off of this level here. And by the way, you can also adjust the color. So the way you adjust the color using the RGB curves node is it kind of works in reverse. So if I want the red color for maybe a flash character, I just take it over to the opposite end of the color wheel. And there we go. That's kind of cool. If I want kind of a Quicksilver blue look, just take it over to the red and you get more of that blue, icy, silvery type of look going on, which looks cool too. Okay. Now you can turn down the factor of this on the alpha over to decide how transparent you want that to be. I kind of wanted it to be subtle, so for mine I sort of left it more of a subtle look. You can turn it all the way up. It's all to taste, all however much you want that kind of streak of light to be. Now, another thing, I want it to displace my video. So I want this light to kind of leave a warp in the video. Kind of a trail of, you know, I don't know what you call it. We want the video to warp and change and be displaced by the presence of this super fast guy here. So to do that, let's add a displacement node. So I'm going to press Shift A, and I'll just search for displacement and drop that in right here. So the image output after our alpha and over is plugged into the image of that displacement node. And I want the vector of this to be the output of our render layer, so our streaks of light. So I'm going to take the output of that into the vector of the displacement node. And I'll set the X and Y scale to 3. And now you can see the subtle sort of displacement and warping it goes. If I turn this value up, you can kind of see the increased result of that. And by the way, how much brightness you have over here, that all affects, this all affects the warping. So now you see anywhere where it's the brightest, there's more warping going on, like so. So I'm going to turn this down. I might go just 3 for each of that. Again, it's all to taste. However much warping you want in your scene, you know, you can really go crazy with the displacement. I kind of like the subtle approach, so I'm sort of setting my factor for the alpha over. I'll set to 0.4, and my displacement I'm going to leave at 3 for the X and Y. So already that's looking really cool. I like that a lot. Again, any point along here, you can adjust any of these things, make it whatever color, however bright you want, however blurry you want. You'll get different results all along the way. But if you want to kind of keep pressing it, then add more particle systems, add other sort of effects, other light and whatnot. I'm going to take the output of this render layer and I'm going to add it to everything we've done so far. So I'm just going to press Shift A and add in a mix node. Actually, I'm not. I'm going to press Shift A and add in an alpha over node. So I'll set that in over here after my displacement. And I'm going to duplicate this blur node, Shift and D. But I want the X and Y value and the size to all just be 1. And I'm going to take the render layer into that blur node. And now I'm going to take the blur node and plug it into the bottom of that alpha over. So now I have what looks like little sparkly lights inside my streak of light there. And I want those to kind of give off little streaks of light. So I'm going to press Shift A and add in a glare node. And I'm going to leave it on streaks so it looks kind of sparkly. And we can just play with this value. If I take the threshold down and the mix up, You can see some changes there. Let me see. Let me take the threshold up a bit. Take that mix down. There, I want those sparkles. I'm going to turn up the streaks. And now finally I'll just turn down the fade. I just kind of want the edges to shine a bit. Okay? And again, this is all optional. You can adjust all these settings. You don't have to do it. But it kind of adds a little extra flair there when you have these sort of streaks. Having to kind of add that glare, making it look like it's sort of leaving a trail of light behind him wherever he goes. And you can, cool thing about this, you can change the color of those little streaks as well by adding in an RGB curves node and maybe changing this more toward more of a green color. So now that inner color is blue and then the outward streaks are kind of a green. So yeah, you can really make it any color you want. Any adjustment you do, anytime you just keep adding things together inside the compositor, getting more and more effects going at the same time, it really helps to sell your effect, make it look more advanced, more like it's part of the actual 3D world and not just something you've composited in later on. So yeah, just have fun with those values, play around with them, see what everything does, and create your own sort of streak of light. I'm pretty happy with that. I might actually increase this displacement so that it displaces my video a little bit more. But for the most part, that looks pretty cool. I might jump to a previous frame, hit render, make sure everything's looking cool. And there you go, you can see the displacement and kind of the blast of light that that's creating. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I think the whole Quicksilver look comes through nicely. I might turn each of these down, each of these factors, just so it's more subtle. Right about there. Again, I have my streaks. Let me set the mix to 0.5 and the threshold to 0.1. It's a pretty good value. And I'll increase that fade so that you see more glare going on. Yeah, there we go. That looks nice. Pretty happy with that right there. Yeah, I think that looks pretty fantastic. Again, this is all it's all up to you how much you want. You can certainly adjust each of these values to create the final effect, this final Quicksilver look that you want. The goal was to come up with an idea that was very customizable, that didn't use any smoke simulator, and something that you could do render out very quickly for a Quicksilver effect. Super speed tutorial. So hopefully I didn't go too fast for this tutorial and you're able to learn something cool. Now, another really cool thing. If you want to play this back before rendering it out, we can actually name this scene up here. Let's name this speed. And I'm going to jump into the video editing right here. I'm going to click plus and just add in a new scene. Now this is really awesome. If I press Shift A and add scene, you can see we have the scene we just added and the speed. So we can drop that in. And you might think, well, I don't see anything at all. Well, if I press N, bring up that sidebar, uncheck Open GL Preview. So if we just hit play, then Blender will cache in all these frames that were plugged into the compositor, and we'll be able to watch our effect back in real time. And there you go, there's the final effect. You can see our streaks of light come through quite nicely, and that really improves upon the whole Quicksilver effect. Anytime you just take the time to add that simple particle system, those streaks of light, some fancy things in the compositor, you get a really cool result. Now you may want to come back into the compositor. You might want to add some color correction in here, do some final tweaking of any of your settings. Just customize this effect so that it is yours, and yeah, just make it look awesome. And then you'll want to render that out as maybe a PNG file or a QuickTime file. Just choose a directory and send that out for outputting. And yeah, post it on blenderbranch.com. I love seeing what you guys create. Send me the link any way you can. There's a lot of ways to get a hold of me on Facebook and Twitter and things like that. So I hope this was a fun visual effect tutorial, and hope you can use Blender to make some awesome things for your short films and visual effects and stuff like that. By the way, if you like visual effects and you're interested in doing some more advanced style visual effects, check out Light It Up. It's a new training product from blenderbranch.com in which I teach you how to do some Hollywood style visual effects, such as lightsabers and muzzle flashes and things like that. So be on the lookout for that from blenderbranch.com. Until then, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next blenderbranch.com tutorial.